Let's call to order the Village of Oxford Planning Commission meeting this date, April 18th, 2023. If we'd all stand and rise and pay respects to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Secretary, if you please call the roll.
Justin Ballard.
Here.
Maureen Helmuth.
Yes.
Michelle McClellan.
Here.
Leslie Pilak.
Here.
Scott Flynn and John Nold are absent.
Since we do have four commission members that are here tonight, we do have a quorum. Do I have a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved. Support.
All right, we have a motion and one approved. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, excellent. We have an approved agenda for tonight. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes dated March 21st, 2023?
So moved. Support.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor to approve the minutes?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? All right, we have approved minutes. Madam Secretary, do we have any correspondence?
None that I have. Joe, do you have any?
All right, so we have no correspondence tonight. This takes us now to item number 7. Is there anyone in the public that has any public comment? All right, seeing none, we're moving on we have no new business tonight. We're working on our old business, which is brings to the old business in which we're revisiting and reviewing the revised site plan for 43 Washington Street. And this will help address the open items from the March 21st meeting, which consists of the off-site parking, revised layout, the emergency truck plan, the dumpster layout and enclosure, landscaping, and the lighting detail. Mario, if you'd please help us with that.
Yes. So as just summarized, what we're here to look at is the creation of a new building on a newly created lot. We have a 9,350 square foot lot located behind 47 and 57 North Washington. And the applicant is proposing to construct a 2,880 square foot building as a storage facility for the business. So the use in and of itself is permitted in the district. The revised plans in front of you have dealt with cleared up some of the issues with regards to the building location and distance from property lines and other related issues. So as proposed, the plans in front of you meet all the dimensional requirements for setbacks of the ordinance. With regards to building elevations, the plan is pretty much similar to what was previously proposed. The applicant is proposing to utilize a horizontal black metal siding at the foundation and a smaller scale dark gray horizontal metal siding on the front or east elevation, and then vertical dark gray metal siding on the north. So basically that as it's being proposed in this manner because it's intending to complement the existing building on the site. It is located in our C1 transition area, so it is under the downtown overlay. However, the one issue I'd just like to point out is that this area of downtown does kind of transition from what we have as a normal pedestrian scale Midwest, what I would call a Midwestern style village of a brick facade, with 0 front setbacks, front elevations with a retail atmospheric scale and pedestrian scale design, typical to south of the site. Then beginning of this site, it begins to transition slightly into some of a different style of building. Directly in front of 47 North Washington is a single-family structure with a traditional residential style facade, and then the buildings continuing north are the same character in terms of a single-family structure that has been renovated to accommodate a different use. And so the applicant has indicated they're proposing this style of building to match the style of the immediate vicinity of this building. So that's the intent behind this particular details as proposed. So with regards to any kind of discussion about the elevation, I just wanted to point that out. When it comes to parking, we looked at the parking requirements. The site itself will be utilized for storage, and then due to its location behind 47 and 57 North Washington, it will be basically sharing the parking lot that's located between all three of these sites. So looking at the parking requirements of 47, the parking requirements of 57, and the parking requirements of this new structure, the parking lot located between these buildings that fronts on Washington has more parking than as required for the minimum standards. So as proposed, this use would be capable of accommodating any parking demand for the new structure. The only thing we know is that because of the shared use of that parking lot, we would recommend a parking sharing agreement be between all these different entities be provided. When it comes to landscaping, this is another kind of unique aspect of this development. We do have our normal landscaping requirements, and then there is the grading plan notes, a planting area in front of the building foundation, and then there is a sheet L1 that has some proposed planting, indicates some planting beds in front of the the proposed new structure. And I believe it's proposed of this style. This is the limited nature of the landscaping, mainly because of the lot coverage of the building, and the fact that any other opportunities for landscaping really are to the rear of the existing structure. So they really wouldn't benefit too much in terms of adding any kind of aesthetic improvements necessarily. And then another aspect is the fact that as being in the downtown area, we don't always have that many opportunities required by the zoning ordinance to provide landscaping. A lot of our landscaping requirements are either for street frontage, but this particular building and location doesn't have actual street frontage, so there's no requirement for street trees. Then the landscape ordinance requires parking lot landscaping. However, this particular site doesn't have any parking. So any requirements that you would believe would be appropriate for the landscaping should probably just reflect the more urban nature of the building. And so I think that's why the applicant proposed this particular planter box style configuration of any kind of landscape. Then with regard to the lighting, the applicant has submitted a cut sheet details for the proposed decorative gooseneck lighting, and then some wall sconces. They all are fully shielded and directed downward, so they are in compliance with the ordinance. Then the last item with regards to the dumpster. The dumpster note on the site plan indicates they will be would like to utilize the dumpster behind 57 North Washington. So to ensure that that is functional in the future, we would recommend that a dumpster sharing agreement also be on file with the village for this site and between this site and the adjacent buildings. So in the end, we would recommend that these documents be provided, and then should the planning commission grant approval, it should be contingent upon the parking sharing agreement, the dumpster agreement, and then any conditions of approval from the engineer or the fire marshal.
Thanks.
That's all I have.
Ladies, do you have any questions? Leslie?
I have a couple of questions. There, on what would be the northwest section of this property, there is no screening of any kind between here and that residential area. What's the requirement for that?
There actually is no requirement because even though it's existing as a residential structure, it's actually zoned commercial. So our zoning ordinance only requires that kind of screening between commercially zoned property and residentially zoned.
Okay, so there's no requirement for a screen.
No, no.
I have some landscape questions too. Do you want me to keep going?
Sure, go ahead.
So I understand that there are going to be planting beds proposed between the overhead doors and the pedestrian doors. And are those raised beds or are they at ground level?
That's a good question, and it doesn't.
At ground level?
I'm not sure, the applicant probably needs to answer that.
Okay. So those are ground level beds. They're 3 by 8 and 3 by 3, and there are 3 each of those, is that right? Okay, and your design is proposing 3 different planting materials, a shrub, and 2 perennials.
Well, I mean, if you want to call that limelight or shrub, it's flowering shrub. In other words, I use that because it's provides color pretty much the whole summer. So I like a lot of color, so all the things I typically plant are colored during the summer.
Yeah, so, but it's a shrub. It's classified as a shrub, limelight is.
And then we, if you're familiar with this site, we have some pretty heavy landscaping at 47 that has a lot of landscaping. And then we also have another bed of landscaping with a sculpture on the north side of the driveway. So there's a lot of landscaping that we put in, sort of the entry into that parking lot.
Right, but on the new proposed lot, the only landscaping you're proposing are these items that you mentioned. Okay, so a couple of things is how are you I see that you have sprinkling systems proposed for the grass area. That you're gonna seed the grass area. How are you gonna water the beds?
With the sprinkling system.
With a sprinkling system at the beds too?
All my landscaping has sprinkling systems.
Okay, well, I don't know, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, we don't hand water anything.
Pardon me?
We don't hand water anything, everything is with automatic.
So that's gonna be part of the beds, okay? And, the concern that I have is it's an adequate number of varieties for the requirements that we have. And you have 3 shrubs, we have shrubs proposed, but it's only 1 variety. And I'm not sure if you were planning 1 shrub in each of the beds, is that what you were planning?
Normally we, like day lilies, we tend to group those, so there might be 4 or 5 plants.
No, I guess I'm talking first about the limelight, which is a shrub. So were you planning 1 of those in each one of those beds, is that
It
the
all
plan?
depends on what size you get, but you know, we tend to get, I don't really like little dinky plants, so I tend to get bigger plants. So that they look pretty mature when we put them in.
Right, no, so, and I have no problem with the actual choices, and I think limelight is a nice shrub, and it's easy to take care of, it's appropriate and all that. But it isn't clear how you would lay them out, and the reason that's important is because we have a diversity requirement. So you can't have more than 30% of the same plant, and you don't have enough variety listed in the plants that you plan to use.
Well, I've gotten 15 beautification awards for landscaping.
It's not about beauty, it's about the zoning ordinance.
So
And the
first,
requirement-
if you have a particular, I mean,
I just want to be clear that I think that this is, getting where it could be, but I would suggest that there be more variety, and more administratively, we can make sure that you know what that
if you have
means.
a particular plant that you like, I'd be more than happy to.
No, it's not about that, it's really about the variety and the requirements.
Well, we certainly will cooperate whatever you.
Okay,
think is
so,
appropriate.
so the understanding is that the irrigation is gonna be in ground, and I would also just want to encourage, this is just a suggestion though, encourage you to consider putting some additional shrubs or columnar type evergreens in that corner where, that I was just pointing out a little bit ago, the northwest corner of the lot, just to create a little bit of a visual barrier and to beautify the area that you have without interfering with anything you want to build. It would also add to the variety of the planting materials that you would be introducing. It would not be excessively expensive, but it would be, help beautify the lot. Those are my landscape questions and concerns.
Thanks, Leslie. Mo?
I just love the look on John's face, it's wonderful. Glass overhead doors.
Pardon me?
Your overhead doors are gonna be glass.
Yes.
That was my only question.
Okay.
I know where the house sits, I think it's a bold choice.
Oh, because, yeah.
No.
Okay. We got a chance to look over and review Rowe's mechanical review. Mario, was there anything else that was there related to that? From Rowe's letter?
I'll be honest, I didn't have a chance to review it in detail. I can
Okay.
look at it right now.
So typically in Rowe's letter, it was the site plan. One was with respect to the proposed water and sewer connections. That was 1A, in which it was actually, the item had been addressed. The other item was item number B, and that had to do with, shows that the proposed water and sewer connections would be connected to, and not only the proposed storage building, which is the building to the south, and that, but also the adjacent existing building, which would be the new building at 43rd. It basically stated that we understand the existing building is connected to the water and sewer service of 47 Washington Street, and that which is not referred on the plan, but instruction regarding the disconnection of the service from 47, in conjunction with the new proposed work must be included on these plans. So it's basically stating that you're taking, disconnecting the service from 47 and connecting it to 43.
So that, you want that noted on the plan?
Yeah,
Disconnect?
And it's more or less just, it's
Record-keeping.
just record keeping, and just for communication. And the other item number 2 was, if approved, the owner is advised that the property cannot be further split into 2 parcels with 2 owners in the future if the water and the sewer are shared. So that means that if the south building and the new building are shared, you can't split those 2 off.
That's impossible.
Yeah.
Correct. It's still for records, okay? And approved, so the building official will need to approve this arrangement prior to the issuance of the permit. Okay? Just so that it's part of our record. Ms. Sharp?
Yes.
So in the water and the sewer will be coming from Davison Street?
That is correct.
Maybe reason why, or what, is that the only location where that water is available?
That's where the water, that's where the water line is located. I mean,
They had one in 1024 for the
so otherwise
service.
we gotta go on 1024.
And that's not advisable.
Correct.
Okay, that's more or less the question that I had is we're putting in an easement on 47, if the water line would be coming from that direction, part of that easement.
No, that easement's for egress only.
Okay.
So there will be a required easement for utility easement to go across the rear of the other properties up to Davison Street.
Okay. And so that all gets directed underneath that building?
Yeah, and Chuck's gonna, he's gonna use a contractor and they're gonna go through that drive-through garage, whatever you wanna call that thing. Yep, they're gonna probably tear out that floor slab through there and bring that service in through there.
Okay.
As far as the easements go,
The one was I already have the one for the ingress egress going on to the front. But I think our ordinance says required because you're going over the neighboring properties, the utility easement.
The easement for the utilities, we wouldn't do until the job is done because
Correct. Yep.
The other one needs to be done And you have it, you provided it to me.
Yeah.
Gotta be recorded though.
Yes.
Okay.
That was part of the split.
Okay, takes care of that. I have that question answered, get that one taken care of. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
I do have one more, I'm kind of confused about what the DDA was looking for in this building and whether that has been addressed. What are your thoughts about that?
We did ask them for any kind of comments, and they basically just wanted, they didn't provide any specific direction, they were mainly just concerned that it would match the adjacent buildings. So that's where that came up, the idea that, yes, this is, while in the DDA, technically this is the beginning of the C1 transition district. So the C1 core is what's beginning at the property directly south, so this is right at that boundary.
So you don't have any additional suggestions about the materials or aesthetics?
Not at this time.
You know, kind of, you know, the way I've seen it, and got a chance to go over, to look at the location, look at the property, and look at the existing buildings. This, you know, the design of it falls in line with what is, I feel what is there, and it, part of that, that location and that transition. So, I personally am, okay with the design and what they have. So I have no issues related to it. So I think, you know, maybe if there is no other questions or comments or anything else that I see as far as issues outstanding, then I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to approve the site plan for 43 North Washington Street, contingent upon meeting the recommendations from the McKenna letter dated April 13th, 2023, the Rowe letter dated April the 11th, 2023, and the fire marshal letter dated April 4th, in addition to include the landscaping variety.
Is the parking sharing agreement and the dumpster sharing agreement in those letters?
That is correct, yes. Yep.
I'll support.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. No second. Madam Secretary, if you please call the vote.
Pilak,
Yes.
Helmut,
Yes.
McClellan,
Yes.
Ballard,
Yes. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, this brings us now to old business, 2022 annual review letter and the 2023 action plan. Mario?
Before you is a draft of a proposed, or actually just a draft for discussion of the annual report and action plan for the coming year. This is something that is required by state statute, and it's merely intended to provide you with a draft so you can provide any comments you feel like might need to be included. It does summarize all of our activities from last year, which were pretty extensive given the number of adult use marijuana applications and sign design reviews. And then with regards to the action plan, it really does just take the text from last year to begin that point of discussion. Because I know we've talked about other issues that might have become more relevant during this past year. So if you wanted to reprioritize things or also just add things to this list and remove items, that could be your purview, because you could also indicate that these are in no particular order, or if you wanted to, you could put them in a particular order. For example, I know landscaping has been an issue that we thought might be necessary to address.
So Mario, with this, is this do we need to do anything with this tonight, or is it more for just to review and take into consideration?
Yeah, you might, I would suggest at least having some discussion amongst yourselves if you've had the opportunity to review it, because we didn't just present the draft one. And we didn't discuss it at all at the last meeting, just because that was presented to the members at that meeting, so they didn't have an opportunity to even look at it until that evening. So if you wanted to discuss it, I just suggest that, and it's up to you how you want to move forward, when you want to move forward with it. While yes, this is the annual action plan, and it is April now, I think that's still all right, because it is something that, while required, there is no specific deadline or requirement to submit to the council. It's just that you must submit it at some point. And then you'll have the amount of time between then and the next time you submit another plan to go over any topic.
Give me one. So with the annual review letter, do we can we do one and then the other, or are they both done at the same time?
Typically, it's the same time, just because they are pretty succinct. So it's just a matter of, that way, because in theory, the possibility could be you're looking at all the past activities from the last year, seeing the issues that were brought up, and then that should at least somewhat correlate to what you're planning to work on in the future. Either basically that's one tact to take, is one approach.
Okay. All right. Leslie?
Yeah, so, you weren't here last time, but we did, bring up and talk about the number of times landscape issues come up suggests that we should be looking at updating our ordinance so that it reflects, the current practices and best practices. And Mario said that it would be possible if we wanted to take that on as a specific goal. He would be able to research what some other communities are doing, everything from, tweaking the ordinance to specify, the tree list that can be used, the tree list that can't be used, things that clarify things so we don't have to keep addressing it every time the site plan comes up, or not as often.
But isn't, so most of the things that you bring up, if I remember right, such as the 30% of any given species, that's part of our ordinance already.
It is.
So technically, that's a office, that's an office. Administrative area in which, administratively, they should be communicating this before it even comes here.
It's true.
So technically, that's, go ahead.
I'm sorry, but our ordinance could be improved in terms of the language could be improved. We could include a better clarification of things like introduction of bioswales and things that are more sustainable, that just reflect better practices.
Like indigenous
Yeah,
stuff, you
and
always mention
For example,
that.
some of the things we've been including are not necessarily specified in the ordinance, but we require them or are asking for them because they meet the intent of the ordinance. For example, utilizing native species. It's not a requirement, but it's something we feel through your practices and your approvals, you felt that that's something we should, encourage applicants to do. So the only issue with that, so then the discussion would be, do you feel that's appropriate right now to leave it in that manner, or do you feel like something should be codified, meaning some type of requirement should be included, or at least referenced in the ordinance? So what it could be is, typically when you go through an ordinance, you do have an objective as to how you want to see it revised, but it can also be an exercise of just taking a look at that ordinance, evaluating it based on your current practice, and see whether anything should be done or shouldn't be done. So it might involve just doing a little more research, comparing what you have out there and what you have and compared to what else has been done, and then seeing if anything needs to be revised, because there might be some minor tweaks or it might be others. And so once again, this is a part of your action plan, so it's something when you have the opportunity to speak, to talk about it, you can take it up, but that's all based on your workload. Like for example, last year we had the same list in front of you, we really didn't have the opportunity to get to any of it just because we were so busy with the site plan reviews. And that might happen again, we might have a big spurt of development and seeing relevant issues, and but then we might have a lot of time on our hands to address them. And then you also want to look at the master plan too. The master plan, is master plan in terms of best practices suggests that you always look at your ordinances to make sure that they're functioning and implementing the master plan the way you intend. So one thing,
But don't we look at the master plan every 5 years? I mean, right?
Right.
And we did that. I think if I remember right, it was under. I think we did it not even 2 years ago. So the master plan, I think if we remember right, we reviewed it and it was up to standard.
Right, and so the master plan, we did that, we went through that exercise, and we found that, everything in there was at that point still relevant.
Mhm.
But the master plan is always the document that guides your annual workload and the tasks you accomplish. And so there are goals and objectives in the master plan that you achieve by looking at your zoning ordinance and doing sub-area plans and these sort of things. So one of the tasks is always looking at your ordinances to see if there's anything that needs to be addressed.
Okay.
It might be best to consider this matter when we have more commissioners present, because Scott's not here to speak, but I know,
I would 100% agree with that. And one of the things that I was going to say is, we should have at least with John and Scott here as well. I think one of these things, and I think I recommended this last time when we did this, is we come back with items that personally each one of us want to see. Personally, if there's 1 or 2 or even 3 items that you personally want to see and address, that I think would be beneficial to the community, I think we should come with that. So I think give a chance to. I'll say the same thing off of here with John and Scott as well, to say, hey, think about some of these things, and when we come to our next planning commission meeting, that we have some of these items that we would like to personally, like I know Leslie personally wants something to do with the landscaping, which having an outline of some recommended trees and shrubbery I think might be beneficial. This could help give applicants guidelines ahead of time of what to use, because I know for every one of the marijuana, every one of the other applicants, they would ask for recommendations anyway. So we might as well, I think it beneficial. Such as even the case of where I said, hey, let's take a look at the signing ordinance. Is there a way that we can help streamline that as well? At the end of the day, it wasn't the idea that we wanted to move forward with that, but that was one of my recommendations I thought would be able to help us. And I think, as I even look at some of these things, I think some of these things are irrelevant to our community, which isn't so much as like the short-term rentals. I don't think that is some of these things that we could probably take off, or I'm speaking me personally now, or things that I would like to put on here as well. So, okay.
What I would like to say is that it would be nice, as we're looking at what should be included on here,
Mhm.
that streamlining is part of what we're looking at. What will help the administration, what will communicate better to applicants so that they don't have to keep going back because we've reviewed something. We considered that with the sign ordinance the last time and decided not to do that we wanted to review more of the lighting issues with signs. But I think with like landscaping we're talking about, or some of the other ordinances, if we're looking at recommendations that are going to make it easier for everybody, that to me helps us do a better job of what we're doing, and helps administration get that handled with applicants before they have to come in here and then hear that they have to go back and do something.
Yes.
I think that's not the best way to go. So
Yeah.
that's my personal, goal would be to look at these things so that they accomplish that.
Just an FYI, the food trucks,
Mhm.
they're actually gonna take that out of the zoning ordinance. It's gonna have its own ordinance that the village manager is working on. hopefully to try to gear it so it's kind of compatible with the townships. So the fire chief only has to know one thing.
Is, well, we can talk offline about that. Okay, all right. Any other questions, Mo, or any other comments related to to that?
No, because I do feel shame. I didn't think about this at all for the last month. I have done nothing. So.
Well, you haven't had
I
anything
feel
on your
shame.
plate except for this. Okay, which is, you know, and at the same time, here's one of those as well, it's just because it's here right today, we don't have to rush into solving these things as well. And at the same time is we don't also have to make rules just because we can make them as well. You know, take a look, we don't have to do work just to do work sometimes. So, questions, comments?
No, I like, you know, I mean, I like thinking about, you know, reviewing some of those things that we keep going over. And,
Sure.
you know, and like Leslie was saying, having people come in and saying, well, by the way, do this, or we recommend it's not there, but we really would like it. And,
Okay.
which most people have done, especially with like the dispensaries. They were like, okay, whatever you want, you know. They're like, are you, can we be here? Okay, great, you know, yeah. So, but yeah, I really like.
The only thing I can think of is like off the top of my head, this almost applies. Lot coverage in like residential districts. We've got some lots that are really covered with buildings. And there used to be a percentage of lot coverage. I'm not sure we have that in our ordinance.
It still is in there because I've had to do it twice. And I've had to calculate the percentage.
Of your own personal one?
Yes.
Okay, because there are some lots in the village that's like, I can't believe we're letting them do that.
It could be like a pre-existing older,
Right,
Or like the corner of Pleasant and Pontiac, that's a multifamily, a
right.
duplex, so multifamily is different.
But there's other corners.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, but I know now it popped
What does
up,
that mean?
so people have
Lot
questions about that, like, can you do that?
Like, okay, you know that,
It's those,
that's a good example, the house at the corner of Pleasant and
the new one.
Burdick, the new one.
Yeah, yeah,
There's a lot of property on there, there's a lot of building on that lot.
right.
But it is multiple families, so it's got different
It's zone multi.
requirements than a
Right.
single family.
Right.
For instance, the one at the corner of Pleasant and Lafayette,
Mm.
that has the biggest garage I've ever seen in my life, attached to a relatively smaller home. I don't know what that lot coverage is.
Okay, so it's talking about, forgive me for not knowing like this particular, you know, for that, so like with your example, so what have you had to do with your home, if you don't mind me asking? You're saying for like your house to like
You have,
usage kind of thing?
you have a square
Like the-
footage of your existing lot.
Right.
And then you have built all your outbuildings.
Mhm.
Oh,
Like
All of
30%
your buildings.
30% coverage maybe,
Garage.
Yes,
It's
you can
40.
only,
Shed.
40%.
40.
yeah, you can
You
only
can't have solid buildings, you gotta have lawn.
Yeah.
And there's some that just seems excessive.
Have you seen that house on Lincoln? It's like this big and then it has this big, huge, that's like in my backyard.
Oh, the,
It's got a big, huge pole
overhang.
barn thing, I don't know what the back there, but the house is like this.
Mhm.
It's
Before we get off that, I do have, one suggestion I hope you consider on the zone, or signage. I brought it up last summer, I think when Red Naps was doing theirs. You allow canopies, and then you allow a sign on the canopy, but it's only one per business. And in some cases that makes sense, but a lot of these places with two entrances, they have a front street and they have a back, or front entrance and rear entrance. And if they wanna put a canopy in the front and the rear with their name on it, they can't currently. So maybe you could look at it as like one per frontage for the canopy sign.
That is a good point. That's one of the ones, I had that on one of my lists a long time ago.
Yeah, I know, we came up, and I wasn't actually doing there, it was kind of a deal, like, well, that's great, which
Yeah.
side you gonna choose to put it on?
But then you have to think about, why did they have that rule?
The wireless toys,
Right.
but that was all on one side.
500 canopies with the same sign.
Yes, I think it was I think I described you guys then, I assumed it was maybe an overreaction to it, because again, 5 windows down the side on East Burdick, all that canopy, all that lettering, it was just crazy.
But I'm sure we can
But if
create.
you do like one per frontage,
Yeah,
I have a front or one, you know, I have rear entrance, one canopy sign, or a front entrance, one canopy sign.
Yeah, I
But
think
when
we
you have a
can
front and
raise it.
rear, you gotta choose which one to put it on, and they wanna put it on both, they can't.
Okay.
And
Just a
maybe,
little-
maybe, right, and maybe like make like a size requirement or something like.
Yeah, there's
Main
already,
and this.
Or percentage or.
Like-
yeah, it's already like a size on the canopy, I think it's only 25%.
Oh,
or-
but like if you were to, yeah.
But if they have a front and rear entrance, they want to put a canopy on both, they can put canopies on both, but they can only put signs on one. One of those oddities that
Okay.
just comes up.
Maybe we just need to sit here one day with the zoning board of town going,
This.
oh yeah, we were gonna talk about this on like this.
Well, I
You
think
get
that's
to
what
know
you're
from-
suggesting, isn't it, Justin, that we,
Yeah.
if we have specific areas that we want to address, that we bring those specific things.
That's what I'm
That's what you're
it's,
saying.
it's basically, it's homework. It's saying, hey, you need to,
Like, go-
you need to go through the ordinance yourself. You need to, because I think the time here, us sitting up here, is the time for us to get action done. The time for at home is to do the research to say, all right, these are the ones that I think that are important. So that's kind of what I was looking for. Okay. All right. So I would say let's move on to the. So I think that it kind of gives us an idea. But let's move on to item number 10, which is public comment. Alex, do you have any comments today? No comments today? All right, excellent. Number 11, consultant or administrative comments?
Monday at a time?
No, just as planning commission, you guys approved the site plan over on Eastburg a few years ago. It's, the parking lot is actually being worked on now, in case you haven't seen it. It's been staked and dirt removed for the parking lot to the back, so that's going to be a public lot out there.
Dave Wells.
Really?
Just-
Well,
Yeah,
Cow, I'm
wait,
surprised.
what is that gonna be again?
that's a parking lot.
I know, but what's the building gonna be?
The first floor is going to be Valor Salon.
Oh, but it's changed like, right, a couple
Yeah.
times, cause I think I was in, yeah.
I don't think he
wasn't
had
on
a
when.
tenant at the beginning.
Oh, okay.
And the
Oh.
second, there was gonna be a third floor, but I think it's down to 2 now, isn't it?
No, it's third floor. It was going to be residential to that, and then it wasn't going to be, because it was pulled out of the PUD agreement that was required, residential was pulled out, like, the first meeting after PUD was granted. But it still could be residential because it's in the C1 core.
Item number 12, reports. Oxford Township Planning Commission. Unfortunately, I wasn't there last week, so I don't know what happened. John's not here, but so we'll just kind of move on for that one. ZBA.
Question on that, did you guys address the marijuana thing at that meeting or previously?
In what manner?
Were they going to expand from medical to recreation?
Yes, we recommended that we expand from medical to recreational, which will be brought to the township's board for final approval.
Which is a good idea because a lot of the dispensaries are getting rid of medical because of the licensing, cause it costs more to like have both and stuff, so
It's
it
kind of
doesn't
becoming
matter,
irrelevant.
yeah, right, it
It's-
doesn't matter,
yeah.
yeah,
It
yeah.
put the squeeze on some of our guys, I assume, though, because they have better locations on 24, so eventually some of ours will close.
There's something we can talk about offline,
I
because
just-
even that thing as well is having 3 on 24 is still, but ZBA,
No.
nothing from the ZBA? Okay, DDA?
But working with them, if you recall, they had a grant from T-Mobile and from Consumers Energy to do some placemaking grants on the south side, like behind Naps,
Yep.
all behind the little flower shop there.
North
That's
Plaza.
going to be started pretty soon, and then behind Victoria's as well, to tear out the sidewalks, widen the sidewalks, and stuff back there, and add some archways, make it look nicer. Part of our conversation, walking a week or two ago, was they would come around that swoop behind Naps, as we head out towards the parking lot. The parking, or the sidewalk is not ADA compliant, it's a large utility cab right in the middle of the sidewalk. So it's like 3 feet over to the real estate building and about 1 foot over to the curb. And talking with some of the contractors, the thing was, why don't we just cut the curb and move it up in the parking lot, come down, and move it, we now will have 5 feet on the north side of that box, as you're looking across the parking lot, and it'll be ADA compliant there. So that'll be, the curb will be removed and replaced, and then kind of tie back in about midway back. So that's a relatively new thing. Roe was already working on the designs for the total reconstruction of that northeast parking lot. This is a little bit of change, so they're gonna come back out. It was a slight change order the DDA approved last night, so they're gonna go out and redesign that to have that curb moved to satisfy the better walkability from back there.
Excellent.
Nice.
Oh, fantastic. Commissioner comments? Any commissioner comments? All right, so that brings us now to adjournment. All those in favor?
Hi.
All right, we're adjourned.
7:45.